Hello, everybody. We're welcoming back Ted Sevransky, professional sports bettor out in Las Vegas. And today, Ted has a very interesting subject he's talking about in an article that he wrote regarding the MVP of the NBA and how it affects the point spreads. So there's a lot of dynamics that go into that, and I'm interested to hear the key points that Ted has to present. Ted, first and foremost, welcome back with us. If you will, kind of break this down and open our eyes to some factors that we might not be seeing in all of this.
Excuse me, Mike. I just swallowed a whole cough drop. I was trying to be preemptive in terms of putting one in before I coughed, and I ended up swallowing it while I'm sitting here. So I apologize for that. Let's talk about the concept here. What we're really trying to do, or what I was really trying to do, is identify which players matter the most when it comes to point spreads. And of course, you can get a very simple chart, plus minus chart. That's going to tell you who have been the most impactful players in the NBA when it comes to the success of their teams this year. But the problem with a basic plus-minus chart is that you end up with a bunch of guys like Matthew Dellavedova on the list, non-impact players on successful teams. Andre Iguodala's on that list. We have good players on very good teams, but Matthew Dellavedova, Andre Iguodala, these are not guys that are going to move the needle for the point spread. So the focus here is not on those overall plus-minus numbers. There's a more advanced metric stat that I like to look at called adjusted plus-minus minutes, numbers, which factors in, or real plus-minus, which factors in how much a player is on the floor and how much that is going to impact his team based on playing time. So those are advanced metric numbers, but again, none of that touches what matters most here in Las Vegas, meaning the point spread. And from a point spread perspective, look, it's Steph and LeBron. LeBron and Steph is 1 and 2. No matter how you're going to adjust or make adjustments or however you want to grade it, but after those two guys, you can make all kinds of arguments about who the number 3 most valuable player in the NBA is. I'll tell you who it's not. It's not Kevin Durant.
Okay, if it's not Kevin Durant, because I saw, he's right up there as far as regular MVP voting. Do you think Westbrook would fit in there before Durant?
Yes, absolutely. We want to look at a team's performance when the player's on the court and when he's not. Mm-hmm. We want to look at their point spread performance and their straight-up performance. Oklahoma City's played a lot without Kevin Durant. They played a lot of successful basketball without Kevin Durant in recent seasons. When Russell Westbrook's not on the floor, it's a little bit of a different story. And again, the issue is not just the player. It's the difference between the player and his replacement. They've been able to replace Durant in that offense. He's an irreplaceable player, but they've been able to overcome his absence. There's no way to overcome Westbrook's absence. There's no one else in the team, there's no one else in the league that can do what Russell Westbrook does. When he is gone, when he is off the floor, he means more to the point spread than Kevin Durant, even though Durant is, in the MVP conversation every year, and Westbrook not so much.
That makes sense, and I guess you could even kind of look at that and like a Sacramento Kings, if DeMarcus Cousins off the floor, there's no replacement that's going to affect or adjust or move a line like him. Am I correct in that?
Bingo. And those are some of the guys I like to highlight. The DeMarcus Cousins, where there's nobody is going to replace DeMarcus Cousins for Sacramento. You have Paul George in Indiana, yep. Another guy who's been, as valuable as anyone in the league this year for their team, and a guy who was absolutely irreplaceable when he's not on the floor. Kyle Lowry in Toronto stands out. Lowry's not going to move the needle when it comes to, fan recognition. When it comes to his impact on the team, he's enormous. And look, we talked about the San Antonio Spurs. Oh, they're missing Tim Duncan tonight. Who cares? The real guy that matters for San Antonio is Kawhi Leonard. It's not Tony Parker. They've won games this year where Parker started and didn't score a point. Manu Ginobili, come on. Ginobili's best basketball was a decade ago. Kawhi Leonard's the guy for San Antonio that moves the needle from a point spread perspective, and deservedly so. So a lot of times the bigger name players will adjust the perception of where the market should be, but it's the guys who are irreplaceable for their teams who actually matter the most to their team's point spread results.
And it's interesting, like last year at Portland when LaMarcus Aldridge was playing there, that would be a stat that if he was sitting, that would be too huge to replace. Now, with him in San Antonio and the role he's playing there is quite different. He's actually in the top 10 for possibility to win the MVP this year because of what he does contribute when he's on the floor. So that's an interesting factor as well. Let me ask you this, Ted. With your Golden State scenario, all right, Steph Curry, we all know what he brings to the table. He's averaging 37 a game, all that. Now, when he sits, not necessarily a replacement, do you feel Klay Thompson brings value to that as far as how he can affect a line? Because let's not forget, that's the same guy that popped off 37 points in one quarter last year in a regular season game. How does those dynamics play into this?
Yeah, I mean, Thompson Thompson will stay at the 2 when Curry sits. Curry's going to be the 1, and when he's out, you get a mix of guys playing the 2. Iguodala played a lot of point when Curry missed 2 games with it right before New Year's. And if you looked at the 2 games, the first game that Curry sat, he sat on back-to-backs at Houston and at Dallas. And the first game that he sat, you know what? The entire team was like, yeah, we're tired. Steph's out tonight. And the shoulders collectively slumped. And they were no-shows. And it wasn't just that Curry was out. It was that Curry was out and the team, there are times you're going to see teams step up when a star goes down, especially in that first game without him. Yeah. There are other times, and this isn't the case for this particular scenario, but there are other times that an injury-riddled team suffers one more injury and boom, that's the backbreaker. Even though it's not necessarily the most important guy in the team, once the injuries mount, and you get that one guy who's a glue guy or an energy guy, and he's missing, and all of a sudden, boom, the bottom falls out for those type of squads. So you do have various different scenarios for any individual player. But with Golden State, they had the first game without Curry, they were a no-show. The second game without Curry, all of a sudden they're like, we got something to prove. We're playing with pride tonight. This is not an average NBA game. We got embarrassed without our star, and guess what? We're still good. And, of course, they pulled the outright upset in that game, the only game all year where Golden State's been an underdog, and they won it in straight-up fashion.
Yeah. And with all that being said, Ted, is there any other players that might stick their head out that you think really bring value to this scenario and to this formula before we close it out?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly talked about some of the guys that stand out. Andre Drummond for Detroit is someone that stands out to me. Jimmy Butler for Chicago, another
that was the name I was waiting for you to hit on right there.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, Jimmy Butler. That was the name I was waiting for you to hit on. So didn't mean to interrupt you, though. But
no, not at all. What about, and there's a number of other guys. Paul Millsap stands out to me for Atlanta. And Millsap, again, he doesn't move the needle from a point spread perspective on a nightly basis. When he's not there, the Hawks cannot replace him. They're a pretty good team when he's on the floor. So these are the type of guys that I like to look for. The guys that aren't necessarily the huge marquee, huge name superstars, but were absolutely irreplaceable for their teams when they're absent. When a guy like that, again, one game scenario, it matters, but a lot of times the teammates will step up. When a guy like an impactful player is all of a sudden out for 4 to 6 weeks, you might see good effort or two for a few games, but that effort tends to tail off the longer that a key player is missing.
Ted, when you just said that with Millsap, you couldn't have said it any better. A couple games ago, he had some personal issues to deal with. His grandfather died, went to attend a funeral, and they lost outright to Phoenix. So that's the impact you're talking about that a player has, because he can't be replaced. That's very interesting. Viewers, you heard it out there, and I totally am advising you to look up that article from Ted and read up on it. That is very interesting. Ted, thanks for bringing those points to the light. I got a lot out of that, and I'm sure the viewers did also. I just like the way you come at these things at different angles and what it brings out, and at the end of the day, it's spelling profit, and that's what's most important. All right, we look forward to getting back with you. Have a great evening, Ted. Beat the book, and we'll talk to you soon.